Hello and welcome. In this lesson, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at something that might seem a little bit insignificant to you until you actually go ahead and use them in your writing responses, which is dashes, semicolons, and colons. Now, these symbols basically are pauses, things that indicate a small gap in the things that you're saying, and they are punctuation, very basic punctuation techniques. However, they are ones that often get, particularly in the case of dashes, overused. So, what you need to look at is just a proper use of them first, because often not many classes cover the proper use of these devices. And the thing is, they actually each have a unique purpose. So, when you're looking at them very closely, what you need to do is you need to just have a careful look at the symbols that you use. Make sure that they're relevant and proper for the form you're using, because believe it or not, the dashes that often students will use in an essay really shouldn't be used at all. And that's simply because of the fact that you're not trying to deliver it for effect or for meaning. What you're trying to do is just deliver a response. If you're doing creative writing, on the other hand, then what you're doing is you are delivering for effect, so dashes can come into play. So what we're going to look at then is we're just going to look at the proper use of each one of them. And really the main use is for either effect in creative writing or to join sentences for the purpose of listing or clarifying a point. And that's for an essay. Alright, so it's just to put things together which normally wouldn't fit with normal punctuation, such as a comma or a full stop, which you'll use far more commonly. So let's just go through the symbols first of all. The dash or the M dash is the one you're most commonly using. For your hyphens, for your words that are hyphenated, then it's a much smaller one. However, the one that comes up usually when you're auto-correcting, when you're typing, is used most correctly, should I say, in creative writing, and indicates a pause. A semicolon is what is used to join two short sentences which are indirectly related to each other. So they're not things that you can join with a simple comma, as in they are related but not quite as directly as what it might normally be. I'll give you an example later just to clarify that. And the colon is a way of indicating a list or indicating a direction to a main point. And what that does is it basically, it's something that you put ... list. And this one is used mainly as something where you just either write it in layman's terms in a much simpler way, or when you're stating something. So what comes after this is a statement of something, whether it be a quote, whether it be an idea of some description, or even if it's just you clarifying, as I said, what idea it is that you have. Okay, so use of the dash first of all, let's have a look at that one. So the M dash, which is the big long dash, is used creative writing, especially poetry. So for instance, the ghost, her spirit, filled the room. So it indicates there a couple of very long pauses, not quite as long as a full stop, but it helps to create basically a dramatic effect in the reading. So by doing that, what you're essentially doing is you're helping to add a little bit of drama to it. You're helping to create these little moments where people stop and then the action continues on, but in such a way that it does give a bit of a gap, a seemingly almost breathless quality to it, I suppose, and really helps to make the story that you're writing come alive a little bit more. And it's just those fits of variance, like you do when you vary sentences, that help to really bring out the best qualities in your creative writing work. Now this is the correct use. The incorrect use is basically in essays or formal writing, where you would use a colon instead. For instance, the hammer has two uses, ... striking nails and flattening loose edges. And that's basically the same reason you would use a dash there. So it makes it much simpler and much neater for especially an essay. And now essays are normally very, very formally structured, and depending on whoever you have marking it, they can either be very, very, I guess, sort of picky about it, or they can literally just not really care that much. Now, really, you don't want to risk it with someone who might be a little bit picky about it, and it is much simpler just to use a colon anyway. Because what it does is as I said, it simplifies it, it stops you overusing the dash over and over again, and ultimately it fits into the formal structure much easier as well. All right, let's move on to semicolon. Now, the main reason you would use one of these is it's not quite a colon, it's not quite a long pause, it's not quite a comma either, so it's a sort of in the middle. They're used to join two short sentences together, or points that are basically indirectly related. So, Paul went to Munich, semicolon, Anthony went to Prague. Those things there are in related statements, in that they're going to two different places. But because of the fact that we don't really want to start a whole new sentence for the second one, what we do is we basically put a semicolon in there. You may also use it as something like a footnote, which is something which adds to a previous sentence without having to start a new one as well, and without having to put an extra mark to say read here or see this. So for instance, due to recent change in weather patterns, water restrictions will be in place, excluding those with permits. So basically, it's sort of adding a footnote there that restrictions will be in place unless you have a permit. So again, that is a correct use of it, and it helps to, as I said, add that information there for particularly those who have permits and want to make sure that they're covered, while still presenting the information to everyone else that water restrictions are in place. All right, the incorrect usage is basically you never use semicolons in place of a comma. And this happens occasionally, but sometimes they do get used too much. And what happens is it might not necessarily be incorrect, but it does break up your writing a lot more than what's needed, and it will affect your flow of your sentences and your argument in particular. Use it really if you've just got something to say at the end, which is not really part of your point, but you do need to attach it to that point anyway. Obviously, don't make it something that's completely and utterly irrelevant. You're still trying to keep some sort of relevance to your main idea. However, you're just doing it in such a way that it's just adding a small little point on the end to it. And that's it. Now, the colon, as I said, brings the sentence to a very clear conclusion. So there are two types of people in the world, brave and cowardly. So like the example we had before. All right. A colon may also be used to indicate where a list is. So to make a kite, you need the following, and then blah, 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 whatever it is you need. Now, those two uses, again, they're very simple. And like when we were going through the dash before and saying that in an essay that a colon is much a neater form of punctuation to use in an essay, that's basically the main reason why you would use that as opposed to a dash. I mean, when you see things getting written, you'll see them being either done with a dash or a colon. Now, technically, either is correct. However, colon is probably the more formal version. So, if you are writing something that's formal, it's probably a good idea just to stick with this one. All right, and that's basically it. So, the incorrect use, obviously, is when you're going into creative writing. A colon doesn't provide the same sort of emphasis as a pause or an em dash does. And that's particularly important. So when you are looking at the type of effect you're trying to create, unless you are basically writing down a list of things in your story, which you'll do very rarely anyway, the em dash works a lot better for creating that sort of effect, that brief pause where people will stop and then people will follow that dash to the next point, the next idea. So that's why it works so much better, the em dash for creative writing. But that's pretty much it, really. There's, as I said, it is a very similar, or a seemingly minor point. But the thing about it is, if you get it wrong, it's one of those things that particularly markers can be very picky about. And it's one of those things as well that you don't particularly want to be letting it cost you a mark or two. And that's all ultimately it will do. But the difference between you getting where you want to go sometimes and where you don't want to go sometimes depends on that one mark. So it's those little attentions to detail, those sorts of things, that really help your work to stand out amongst the others. And that really is about it for it. So until next time, I'll see you later.